Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. This is where accounting professionals come to learn the most efficient and powerful ways to grow their accounting firms, sharpen their sales skills, and really have a path to creating consistent increased revenue. I cover topics from networking, pricing, ideal clients, how to handle objections, how to handle you're too expensive, and how to set boundaries with clients so you can stop giving away your time and expertise away for free and really start getting paid your value and your worth. You'll learn tips and strategies and also hear personal interviews from successful accounting professionals and others in the industry. This podcast will show you exactly how to create the firm and life of your dreams full of abundance. Today, we have a very special guest. Our special guest is Rocky Lalvani. He is a profit-first professional who helps business owners ensure they always have profit. He places the role of Chief Profitability Officer to make sure the focus is on the bottom line. You can learn more about him on his two podcasts, the first one being The Profit Answer Man, which, by the way, if you want a recap of all the chapters of Profit First, he covers them in episode 3 through 13 on that podcast. And the other podcast being Richer Soul. But before we welcome Rocky to the show, it is about March timeframe. And you might be completely stressed out because it's in the middle of tax season. And you might not be too happy with where your accounting practice is right now. And I get it. A lot of the accounting clients that come to us are frustrated, stuck, and probably extremely overwhelmed. Not probably, they are. And what I found is that typically you're just not charging what you're worth, and you don't have a solid system that works on really gaining high-paying, consistent clients. So I have created the Selling Without Ever Selling system, and most of this information has been only for my current clients. But if you're really wanting to get more yeses from higher-paying clients, have your clients and prospects see you as the expert, and get consistent, high-quality referrals, then let's explore and see what's possible and maybe working together. So if you want to, book a call over at theabundantcall.com and really learn how to detach from the emotional side of the business. Maybe you want a paradigm shift after this whole year that we've had and this new tax season. Who knows how long it's going to go. And you see that the sales process is the nucleus of your business. And you want to also have an objection become an asset instead of what was a client telling me yesterday? A combative discussion is what they said. So if you're looking to eliminate all that and you want to do that without being a bother, desperate, or a nag, or salesy, or pushy, then head on over to theabundantcall.com. Let's explore what it could look like working together. And I look forward to hopefully talking to some of you. So now let's welcome Rocky to the show. Welcome, Rocky, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Michelle. Excited to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking out the time to, speak to our listeners here at the Abundant Accountant Podcast. I think it's going to be a great conversation today. For those of you who don't know Rocky, can you just introduce yourself real quick and, what you focus on and how you left corporate and now you're a profit first professional, and just do it from your own words in 30 seconds to a minute.
Uh-oh, that's quick.
I know. We get right to the point here.
I am a profit first professional. I don't come from an accounting background, but I come from a numbers background, which when I look at numbers and spreadsheets and tax returns, they tell me stories. And they tell me stories about how people are behaving and how they're behaving badly with their money. And so I was like, hey, I can use this skill to actually help people behave better with their money. And that's what I do. So I work with small companies, and I call myself the Chief Profitability Officer because my goal is to make them more profitable.
Awesome. I love it. Mike would love that. That's great. So behave better with money. And I'm sure everyone listening, why don't you tell them when you started and you went off 100% on your own?
So I left corporate last year in August, and I literally, so I had planned this out. So I knew that I was leaving corporate, I think about March or February of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that 6 months to kind of build up to my walking away from corporate. And in that time, I had a lot of conversations with Profit First, and we had everything set and in place. And I said to them, as soon as I leave, I'm going to join. And literally, I went in and I resigned on Monday, and I already had my appointment set for Wednesday to talk to the Profit First people and sign up and go.
That's awesome. So I have a couple questions about leaving corporate, because I know there's a lot of if I'm talking to you, you're at your job, you're in corporate, you're getting paid pretty well, maybe between 80 and 150, 200,000 a year, but you're sick of spending all this time working for someone else, growing someone else's firm or business or whatever kind of corporate position you're in. And you've always wanted to start your own business, start your own accounting firm, start your own tax practice, or start your own Profit First professional, coaching business. So for you, Rocky, like, what was it like? I know you planned it out over 6 months, but for those listening who, that paycheck every 2 weeks is pretty comfortable, and to jump ship and go all in, like, what did it take, or what were the biggest fears that you had, like the one or two that you had to overcome?
So I don't think I had particular fears, but understand that this was probably a 30-year plan in place.
That's a long plan.
It's a long plan. But ever since I was young, I always read the Wall Street Journal. And every time there was a recession, you would always hear about that guy who was in his early 50s at the top of his career, would get laid off for no reason of his own doing. And then he would struggle, and he would really couldn't find another job. And I always had that fear in the back of my mind. If I'm going to work for somebody else, one day when I'm in my 50s, they may sucker punch me, and I want to be prepared for that.
Got it.
And so a big part of what I did was build wealth along the way. Now, my wife is also she's an accountant. She does work for, one of those big accounting firms. And my goal was for her always to leave and start her own practice. And she just never did it. She had the fear, right? She still has the fear. I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to run my own business and all the things that are involved in running the business. But when things got bad for me at work, I went to her and said, this is not good. And in the back of my mind was, I could do this in 5 more years and never have to worry. But if I did this in 5 years, I would have regrets that I could have been enjoying my life for 5 more years had I stayed, or had I gone and found another job somewhere else. And I think that was the big thing for me, was the regret of not having the freedom to do what I loved and what I wanted.
Yeah, no, and I think the regret of not having the freedom, for those that have the entrepreneurial itch inside of you and want your own firm, that's probably the thing that you just keep thinking about all day, every day. It's like around the clock, right? And you probably thought about it during your 30 years, right? When you had, like, that's a pretty big fear, by the way, Rocky, where you're like, I read the Wall Street Journal. I don't want to be that guy who's 50, who's just going to get laid off for no reason because of the recession. I think a lot of people, during the 2020 year, I mean, wow, right? I mean, the accounting business is grateful. I'm super grateful to even be working with all of you, because it's busy. We are busy, but a lot of your clients might not be so busy, and businesses are closing and shutdowns here and there. I mean, it's just like it's a crazy roller coaster ride right now.
It is. And I will tell you that people are getting laid off in the accounting industry right now, because think about it. If your client just went out of business.
Yeah, that revenue to the firm is gone.
That's revenue to the firm is gone. All of them are very much cutting. The same thing happened in 2008.
Yep.
They were cutting back then because of what happened. And probably the same thing happened in 2000. So these are cycles. They happen all the time. And a job is not always as safe as you think it is.
And I agree with that, Rocky. It's not. You have your own destiny in your hands when you can have your own business. And I think the hard part for most people listening is the sales, right? You don't want to be a bother. You don't want to be a nag. You don't want to reach out to people. You don't want to do all the things that actually bring in the clients, which the partners in the firm you're working for are doing that work right now. And, I think that's a great segue into why Rocky's here today. And he's here today because when we first met, I think it was during ProfitCon or something like that, he started a podcast and I just thought that was so awesome because most people, it's really scary to start a podcast and, it's a lot of work, but you get clients that way and you don't even need a whole lot of clients. So I thought Rocky and I would have a conversation of the journey of starting the podcast, maybe how many clients he did get from it, even though it's not a ton, but you don't need a lot. And when you have the autonomy, right? And you have no more regrets of not having that freedom to do whatever you want when you want. You get to create whatever it is that you want because that's actually probably more secure than a job because they could lay you off at any time. So, Rocky, do you want to share with us your journey from, you signed up for Profit First the day that you resigned or the day after, whatever that was. And then, what had you go, I want to start a podcast?
Well, so I already had a podcast. I actually started a different podcast about almost 4 years ago. And I was using that podcast as a way to meet people and as a way to market my financial coaching business. Mm-hmm. The problem is it wasn't specific enough. It didn't really speak to a particular person about a particular problem. It was great for meeting people. Podcasts are a phenomenal way to meet people that you normally would never get to answer your call. So from that standpoint, it taught me that part of it. The reason I started that podcast is because I suck at writing.
Yeah, me too.
See, people who suck at writing have podcasts. People who are good at writing don't have podcasts. So figure out the medium that works for you and the way that you work.
Yeah.
So what happened was I was like, look, this podcast's wonderful. I like it. I don't want to let go of my baby, but it's not speaking to the person that I need to speak to. And so I started the other podcast and it spoke directly to the people I need to. So I designed it it's called the Profit Answer Man. So everyone knows, why am I coming to this podcast? Because I want the answer to how do I be profitable? So it speaks to the business owner and I tell them that up front. So I really designed it around my perfect client. And then I started speaking to them specifically. And I did speak about Profit First. So like literally episode 2 is Mike. Mike came on for episode 2.
Nice.
And then episodes 3 through 13 are me going through every single chapter of his book and putting my take on it and showing what I thought about it and explaining it.
Wow.
And then after that, what I did was have people who've used Profit First come on and talk about how Profit First has helped them. Or I might have somebody come on who is a business owner and struggling with profit, and we talk about how they overcame it. Or there are other systems besides Profit First. So I have other people on to share their particular systems, because the system that's going to work for the business owner is the one that they like the most. So if it's not me, I'm perfectly happy to recommend you to someone else that may fit you better. But then they always remember me as the guy who's the Profit Answer Man.
Yeah, no. And you did that about 6 months ago, right?
I did it about 6 months ago. And so probably after about 3 months, I have picked up 2 clients from it. And they're high paying clients. And literally, I will tell you, these clients love me. Right. So the first, it was literally 2 sales calls. So they end up on my calendar. I have no idea who these people are. They've never been connected to me before. And we just kind of go through and I get to understand them and what their issues are. and they tell me why they ended up on my calendar. And then they give me access to their QuickBooks. And then we set up a second call. I go through their QuickBooks and I understand where they're at and what the goals are. And then I look at profit first and I say, okay, this kind of business could get to here. And we get back on a second call and I said, hey, this is what you told me your problems were. I looked at your QuickBooks. I can help you solve these problems. And these are the outcomes that Profit First says we can work towards. Here's what my monthly cost is.
Monthly investment, Rocky, not
monthly
cost.
Investment. Yes.
Yeah, the cost is
You're
what
right.
they're losing every month. They're
Right.
negative in their net income problem. That's what it's costing them.
It's their monthly investment.
There we go.
Literally, it's like, great, I'm ready to do business with you. And with the first one who came through, I sent them an invoice that night. And literally within 60 seconds of the invoice going out, it was paid. That's how excited they were to work with me.
You want a tidbit? All the accountants listening say they already know. Michelle doesn't give out free advice. But when I hear send out an invoice, for all of you listening who have been listening for the last 2 years, you probably know what I'm going to say. Because I've told Eric, I've had Eric Green on a couple times and he's taken my advice. So here's my tidbit for you, Rocky. Instead of sending the invoice, just ask them, would you like to pay ACH or credit card? Which way works best for you? And then type in the information in your own QuickBooks for them. That's my piece of advice for you. And let me know how it works out.
So actually, my last client, that's how I did it. And part of the problem was I didn't have the systems set up. And so I was using PayPal because they made it easy for me to send out a monthly payment system. And I didn't have to think about it. So I try not to think as much as possible.
Yeah, even on PayPal, though, if you guys use PayPal, which I think most accountants don't, but I use it, you can actually create yourself the link that the customer would see. And you just send it to yourself and you fill it in for them. Because that's how I do it. On any system in the last few years, I have not met one accountant with all the different systems out there where that is not possible. So you can actually pay an invoice for a customer. You just need to do a couple workarounds and get it on the customer viewing mode on your end. And then all you say is, which credit card would you like to use, or ACH? Which works best? And that's it.
And so my latest customer, what we did is I set that up in QuickBooks, and I just had them sign an agreement that I could ACH them, and they gave me the information.
Perfect.
And now I just go into QuickBooks and I create a sales invoice and I put their information in, and I say, yep, they gave me permission, and it takes the money out.
Yep, that's great. Okay. So now we got past that. Rocky's doing it the right way. So for all of you that still send out proposals and invoices and wonder where your clients disappear to, and you're like, I sent that to them 2 weeks ago and they did not pay it within 60 seconds, like you got it. That's why, because when you're on the phone or in a meeting with someone, that's when they are ready to move forward. So I have a question for you, Rocky, because a lot of people are probably like, oh, podcast is a lot of work. It takes up a lot of time. You know, I know you've got 2 clients, right? So your ROI, let's just come up with a rough draft number. The value of those clients is what on a monthly basis for those 2?
I believe those 2 add up to about $1,750 a month.
Okay, $1,750, and you've had the podcast for 6 months, right?
Yes.
And how long have you had the clients?
Probably about 3 or 4.
Okay, so what's 1,750 times 4?
7 grand.
Hold on, I'll do it on my calculator. So 1,750 times 4 is 7 grand divided by 6. So basically, your podcast has generated you, $1,100 a month so far. So if we look at the return on the investment just on our time, that's pretty good. That's great. So how many hours a week do you think on a monthly basis do you probably spend trying to, get your interviews, get topics to talk about. Because I think for a lot of accountants listening, it's always busy, right? There's April deadline, October deadline, tax season, blah, blah, blah. I always learn there's never a good time. But I want to bring it to the surface because this is a great way for all of you to start getting leads. And if you're like Rocky and I, we both don't like writing. We rather talk all day. But this is an opportunity for people to get to know you. And it doesn't, I don't think, have to take you too much time. So for you, Rocky, how much time has it taken?
So if it's a solo episode, they tend to be about 15 minutes of recording time. It might take me time to then prep for the 15 minutes of time. So that might be an hour. If I have a guest, they tend to be closer to 30 minutes long. And then there's the back and forth before and after when you're building relationships. So again, about an hour. What I did, my other show is very polished and has all these different segments and all of that stuff. But this show is for the busy entrepreneur. So I don't have all that fancy stuff. I kept it really, really basic. I don't have an editor for this show. I run it through some automation stuff that removes the breath sounds and does some stuff. It takes about 10 minutes to do the editing, and I just have to put my beginning and my end in, which takes a couple minutes to record. And I have it scripted out so that it's very much the same almost for every episode. And then I got somebody actually was nice enough to give me some free music, which is like a 15-second clip to start and end it. So after I produce it, it takes me maybe 15 minutes to actually produce the show itself. There are people that will do this for you in the Philippines for like $30, $40.
Oh, I have even a better option then if that's it. So if you want to start a podcast, email me. They'll do it for $99 an episode. All of what Rocky talked about, plus the blog, transcript, etc. So let me know and I'll introduce you to that person. You guys just need to message me on my website. But so in total, Rocky, for the month, what would you say your time investment is just to keep it going?
I would guess about 4 hours a month.
That's nothing. As long as you schedule it, right?
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun now. So I enjoy it. So I don't consider that work.
Yeah, because you're passionate about it and you love doing it. And when you do, and you find the medium, like you said, that works for you, be it writing or Facebook Live or Zooming or podcasting for us, it doesn't really feel like a whole lot of work. And it got you 2 clients. And it's only going to get you even more clients. So I think this is one of the best ways to, generate leads from something that's organic. And one thing, Rocky, I don't think you mentioned earlier, but the clients probably hired you right away because they've gotten to know you. If they've listened to your chapter dissection for your episode 3 through 13, they heard your interview with Mike, like they've gotten to know you. A lot of you have gotten to know me. I actually just spoke with a couple the other day and they said, we've listened to your podcast. It's like, oh, wow, you guys know me. I need to catch up. I need to get to know you. So they'll be joining me in my next 8-week sales mastery training. So this is an opportunity for you to build a relationship and rapport with future clients that you'll be able to service in the future.
And it's true. They know you, even though you don't know that. It's weird in the beginning when this happens because they're talking about all these things about you. And you're like, oh, who are you again? Because you don't know them. It's not a two-way communication method. So it's kind of weird, but it's good. And then people, I will say this, in the world of podcasting, they say it's somewhat lonely because it's hard for feedback to come back. But just know that people are out there listening to you. And it's impressive because you're in their head for hours. As long as you create good evergreen content, which means that if you went back and listened to any of the episodes, they would all still make sense today. Like they're not topical to the moment. You want to make content that 3 years from now still applies to somebody, because then 3 years from now, even if you stop doing the podcast, it's still producing revenue.
Yeah. And that's what the definition of evergreen means. So if you're like, what was that? That's what he means. Having the content live today and in 5 years from today. So it's relevant and it will help somebody. What do you think the first 1 or 2 steps are for the accountant? They've already left corporate. They're 2 feet in on their business. And pretty much, Rocky, from all of the people that have contacted me, they think their biggest challenge is leads. Okay. And then if they want to start a podcast, what's the first 1 or 2 steps that you would tell them to do right now? Because you can't really start it until you actually have your niche and who you're talking to. So when you were figuring that part out, and I think this is the hardest part for most people, how did you unwind what was in your head? Because both you and I have learned from our first podcast, they weren't niche specific enough. I have one too, and it's not. It's called Success Unfiltered, and you would have no idea what the heck it was about. But that was my first stab at it, and it's still going today. Everything is evergreen there. But if you had to rewind 6 months to a year from now, and as you're starting Profit Answer Man podcast, like, what do you think for the accountant who's looking for new clients, what are the first 2 things they should do?
I think you have to think about who is my end client, right? So you have to think in terms of them and what are they looking for and how will it be so simple and easy for them to find it on my podcast, right? So in my case, it's called Profit Answer Man. It's designed for people who are looking for profit, right? They're struggling with that. You've really got to make it you want to do this that a 5-year-old could understand what your podcast is about. And you want to be super niche to the way that person behaves. And so you want to deliver content in a way that's easy for them. So my other show is an hour plus recording. Well, the busy entrepreneur doesn't have an hour to sit there and listen to me. They do have 15 minutes. And that's why I made this show so short so that the busy entrepreneur could listen and get value out of it. So I was thinking about who's my customer and how do they behave and how do I serve that behavior?
Yeah, I like the how do they behave. I didn't even think about that before until you just said that. And I work with all you guys, right? You're busy. You're accountants, you have a pile of paperwork in front of you, you've got a deadline around the corner, you've got your email box, so many emails, you don't have time to listen. So that's why all these episodes are about 20 to 30 minutes because I know you're busy and I didn't even think about that. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Anything else that you would share with them, like the first 1, 2, or 3 things?
I think that's the first thing is think about your client. And then the other thing I want you to think about differently, and this is a totally different way to do a podcast, is if you need to meet business owners, think about who the business owners you want to meet are and create a podcast that allows them to tell their story. Because the whole purpose of this is to go meet the business owner. Now you've got a reason to call a business owner that's not about, hey, use me, use me. It's, hey, you're doing a great job in the community. I'd love for you to share your story. Will you come on my podcast and do that? And everyone will then start to look at you as the person who's sharing business success stories. And then they realize, oh, they're an accountant too. They must know what they're doing because they're with all these smart, successful business people locally. So if you're working with people locally, that's a great way to get in front of business owners and to build a relationship without sales being involved.
Yeah. And it's the more passive way to build a relationship. And the only other thing I would add to that is, I know a lot of you listening, some of you work with dentists, some of you work with real estate agents. I would try to even get industry specific because then you will have better quality leads coming to you. One of my clients I work with, she works with chimney people and plumbers and those types. And that would be amazing. They can listen to that as they're driving from house to house and client to client. So think about, I would say, just one other layer, the industry.
So name your, it's accounting principles for dentists.
Yeah, exactly. Just like this is called the Abundant Accountant Podcast. It's abundance for accountants and it's a podcast. So they should be able to really figure it out in 2 seconds. Like you said, 5-year-old. Yeah, love it. Rocky, is there anything else that you want to share with those listening that you think be a good golden nugget for them to leave away today with that would be helpful and useful that you would like to share?
Have fun and
Yes.
be your own person. Bring your personality out in your podcast and do something quirky. It's okay, right? Because then they remember you. If you're like everybody else, then you're not going to stand out from the crowd. So don't follow the crowd. Be your own unique person that attracts people like you. So you might have another hobby along with your accounting thing. Bring your hobby in there because that brings another point of relationship building into it. Yeah. And so that will help you find those people, because then all of a sudden the people who need accounting help, who happen to love XYZ, are going to want to work with you because you have something else to talk about besides debits and credits.
Yeah, no, I love that. And thank you again so much for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant Podcast. It was an honor to have you. Thank you all so much for joining Rocky and I here on the Abundant Accountant Podcast. I know a lot of you come to me saying that leads is your problem and it's the biggest challenge. You don't have enough people coming to you and you need more people to talk to. So hopefully today you can pick your medium. You can pick your way. Maybe it's writing, maybe it's blogging, or for Rocky and I, it's podcasting because I suck at writing. It only takes them about 4 hours a month, and you can do it really easily. If you need some support on that, you can send me an email, and I'll refer you to the company that I use that does all the back end. Think about those things he talked about today, right? The first one being, who is your end client you want to help? And until you figure that out, you're basically throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks as far as it comes to trying to generate the right leads. And I also love that he explored how do his ideal clients behave. He works with a busy entrepreneur, so they can only listen for 15 minutes a day. I work with all of you. You're really busy. You want to just get straight to the point. So all these episodes are about 20 to 30 minutes. So thinking about how your ideal client behaves is crucial prior to starting a podcast, a blog, a Facebook show, or whatever medium you're going to use to attract new clients. If you're it's March and you might be inundated with 1040 tax returns, and if you're completely sick of it and want to start attracting those higher paying clients, have a sales process to actually convert at a high level and position yourself as the expert, then I would head on over to theabundantcall.com to book your first slot that you see if you truly want to build a firm where you're confident, you have a sales process, you have more time with your family and your kiddos. Hopefully you're not homeschooling for much longer, but really have the abundant life that you've always dreamed of. So you can head on over to theabundantcall.com and we can explore together and see what challenges you're currently having with your sales process. So if you were to get a lead, what happens to that lead? And really learn and see where are you being attached or detached to the emotional side of this whole sales process. And if those of you that want a paradigm shift, then now is the time. You no longer have to have another year stressed out, overwhelmed, and underpaid. So head on over to theabundantcall.com. I look forward to talking to some of you. You must be in business for at least 2 years to book a call. So make sure to know that prior, and I hope you have a beautiful day.